Here's the thing most men never want to admit. The reason they keep getting overlooked, ghosted, or stuck in situationships that go nowhere. It's not because women are impossible to please. It's not because all the good ones are taken. It's because they don't respect themselves enough to be respected by others. And that's the harsh truth that makes you irresistible to 95.5% of women once you finally face it. You want to be magnetic. You want women to lean in, to be curious, to want to know what makes you different. Then stop chasing validation. Stop performing for approval. Stop showing up like a man who's trying to be liked instead of a man who's trying to live with purpose. Because the second your sense of worth depends on who texts you back or who compliments your outfit, you've already lost the game. A man who's irresistible doesn't need to convince anyone of his value. He just knows who he is. He's not threatened by rejection, not desperate for attention, and not interested in fitting into someone else's version of desirable. He's grounded. He has standards. He has direction. And that's what women respond to, not the car, not the money, not the muscles, but the energy of a man who isn't trying to prove himself to anyone. Most men think being attractive is about having more status, more followers, more success. But women don't fall for more. They fall for solid. They fall for stability, for calm confidence, for that quiet certainty that says, I'm good either way. Because here's what most people miss. Confidence doesn't mean arrogance. It means neutrality. It means you don't crumble when someone doesn't choose you. You don't overinflate when someone does. You stay steady. That steadiness is rare. That steadiness is magnetic. And it only happens when you stop outsourcing your value. When you stop making women the scoreboard for your self-worth. When you stop living to be chosen and start living to be aligned. You become the kind of man who walks into a room and women feel something they can't explain, not because you're loud, but because your energy says, I don't need to be chosen to know I'm valuable. This is where most men fail. They confuse being nice with being strong. They think agreeing with everything. Being available 24/7 and never setting boundaries will make them liked. It doesn't. It makes them forgettable. Because when you lack boundaries, you communicate one thing, that your time, your energy, and your attention are cheap. And cheap energy never feels attractive. Women aren't drawn to perfection. They're drawn to certainty, to clarity, to men who have built their identity around discipline, purpose, and integrity. Men who can say no without guilt. Men who can walk away when something isn't right. Men who can hold their line. That's what creates polarity. That's what makes you stand out. So the harsh truth, it's that you'll never be irresistible to women if you're still trying to win their approval. You become irresistible when you stop performing for attention and start building yourself. When your daily life reflects strength, consistency, and purpose. When you work on your mind, your body, your habits, not to impress someone, but to respect yourself. Because women feel that. They can tell the difference between a man who's seeking them and a man who's centered within himself. The first one is a follower. The second one is a leader. And whether she admits it or not, every woman feels that pull toward a man who leads himself. So the truth that makes you irresistible isn't pretty. It's not soft. It's not comforting. It's brutal. It's that you have to stop needing women to like you. You have to stop performing to be accepted. You have to start living in a way that earns your own respect. Because the minute you do, 95.5% of women will notice. And not because you said the right thing or played some strategy, but because you finally became the kind of man who doesn't need anyone's permission to be powerful. Most men spend their lives trying to prove their worth to others, to their peers, to society, and especially to women. They think the more they do, the more they show, the more they give, the more they'll be valued. But the reality is, the more you try to prove yourself, the less valuable you seem. Because validation, seeking energy communicates one thing. I don't think I'm enough yet. And that energy kills attraction faster than anything else. The truth is, self-respect is the most powerful form of attraction there is. When you genuinely respect yourself, you stop needing others to do it for you. You stop begging for attention and start commanding it through presence, not performance. When a man respects himself, he makes choices that align with his values, not his insecurities. He doesn't tolerate being treated as an option. He doesn't overextend himself for people who wouldn't do the same for him. He doesn't chase approval because he's too focused on building his own identity, one that's solid, disciplined, and consistent. Self-respect creates an unshakable confidence, not the kind that needs to be seen or validated, but the kind that simply exists. You can feel it when someone has it. It's in how they carry themselves, how they speak, how they react when life doesn't go their way. Most men lose attraction not because they lack looks or success, but because they lack boundaries. They say yes when they should say no. They stay when they should walk away. They confuse being agreeable with being kind and being available with being loyal. But self-respect flips that completely. A man who respects himself knows his time and energy are valuable resources. He doesn't hand them out to anyone who shows interest. He invests them wisely. And that's what creates the pull, because a man who values his energy teaches others to value it too. Women can sense that instantly. They can feel when a man is rooted in himself, when his sense of worth isn't tied to whether or not they approve of him. That's the kind of man who becomes unforgettable. He's not trying to please, he's not trying to impress, and he's definitely not trying to be chosen. He's already chosen himself. And that's what makes him magnetic, because when a man respects himself, he sets a new standard for how others are allowed to treat him. Self-respect also changes how you handle rejection, failure, and uncertainty. You stop seeing them as reflections of your inadequacy and start seeing them as feedback for growth. You stop taking things personally because your identity isn't built on fragile validation. It's built on discipline, accountability, and purpose. You're no longer desperate for external recognition because your self-worth isn't up for negotiation. That's the kind of presence that draws people in without effort. It's not loud, it's not flashy, it's quiet strength. And it speaks louder than any words ever could. Confidence isn't about walking into a room and making everyone notice you. It's about walking in and not needing anyone to. Real confidence is rooted in self-assurance, not performance. It's the quiet understanding that you're capable, worthy, and complete with or without validation. Most people mistake confidence for dominance or arrogance, but those are just masks for insecurity. True confidence doesn't need to shout. It doesn't need to prove. It doesn't demand attention. It earns it through calm certainty. That's what makes it magnetic. It's not loud energy that attracts people. It's the absence of desperation. A grounded man doesn't seek to control outcomes. He isn't rattled by rejection, nor does he crumble under criticism. His confidence comes from knowing he can handle whatever comes next. That kind of self-trust can't be fake, and it can't be built overnight. It comes from showing up for yourself consistently, keeping your word, following through on promises, and building discipline when no one's watching. Every time you do the hard thing instead of the easy one, you reinforce your inner strength. You prove to yourself that you're capable, and that proof builds a deep, quiet confidence that doesn't depend on circumstances. What most men do wrong is confuse confidence with performance. They think confidence means being the loudest voice, the funniest guy, or the most noticeable presence. But the moment your sense of confidence relies on how others perceive you, it's already fragile. It's like standing on a stage waiting for applause that never comes. You'll always feel empty without it. But when confidence is internal, when it comes from doing hard things, mastering yourself, and not betraying your standards, no external validation can shake it. That's why grounded confidence is rare. It's not built on ego, it's built on evidence. The reason women are drawn to grounded men is simple: they provide emotional safety. A man who is calm, steady, and sure of himself doesn't react impulsively, doesn't seek control through manipulation, and doesn't fall apart under pressure. His energy feels stable. And stability is deeply attractive because it signals strength, maturity, and leadership. Women don't want a man who's perfect. They want one who's composed. A man who doesn't need to dominate the room to feel powerful. A man whose power speaks through his presence, not his volume. Grounded confidence also creates freedom. You're no longer afraid of losing people because your identity isn't built around their approval. You stop over-explaining yourself. Stop competing for attention. Stop trying to prove your worth. You start living from alignment, not anxiety. That's when you become effortlessly magnetic, when your calm becomes louder than everyone else's noise. Because while most people are busy seeking validation, the grounded man is focused on mastery, and that difference is felt instantly. It's not about pretending to be confident. It's about becoming the kind of person who has no reason to pretend. Most people grow up believing that being nice is the same as being a good person. But in reality, there's a massive difference between kindness and people-pleasing. Being kind is rooted in strength, self-respect, and empathy. People-pleasing, on the other hand, is rooted in fear. Fear of rejection, fear of conflict, fear of not being liked. And that fear makes you forgettable because it strips away your individuality. When you constantly mold yourself to fit what others want, you become a reflection of their expectations instead of a representation of who you truly are. When you lack boundaries, you teach people that your time, your attention, and your energy don't have value. You send the message that anyone can access you whenever they want, no matter how they treat you. It might feel like you're being generous or loving, but what you're actually doing is training others to take you for granted. The truth is, boundaries don't push people away. They make your presence more powerful. They communicate that your energy has weight, that your time matters, and that being in your space is something to be earned, not assumed. A man who has strong boundaries doesn't need to explain himself or justify his limit. He doesn't feel guilty for saying no because he understands that protecting his peace is not selfish. It's necessary. It's what allows him to show up fully where it truly matters. And that's exactly what makes him memorable, because people can sense when someone operates from self-respect. It's not about being cold or detached. It's about valuing yourself enough to not dilute your energy for temporary approval. Women are especially drawn to men who have boundaries because it signals emotional maturity. It shows that you're not desperate for connection. You're intentional about it. You don't just give your time to anyone who asks for it. You choose carefully. That choice communicates confidence. It shows that your validation comes from within, not from how many people want you. That quiet selectiveness is magnetic because it's rare. Most people are so eager to be liked that they forget how to be respected. When you can stand your ground, say no without guilt, and walk away from situations that don't serve your standards, you immediately raise your value in the eyes of others. People start to listen when you speak. They take you seriously because you take yourself seriously. And ironically, the more you stop trying to be liked, the more people end up admiring you, because authenticity commands attention, not because it's loud, but because it's real. The difference between being nice and being respected is that respect lasts. Niceness is temporary. It disappears the moment someone disagrees with you. But respect is earned when people see that you live by your principles even when it's uncomfortable. Boundaries create clarity, and clarity builds attraction. It's that simple. When you respect yourself enough to draw the line, you become someone who stands out in a world full of people afraid to. There's something undeniably magnetic about a man who lives with purpose. You can feel it in the way he speaks, moves, and carries himself. He's not waiting for someone to save him or validate him. He's busy building himself. Discipline, purpose, and integrity are the foundation of true masculine energy because they create consistency, and consistency builds trust. Women aren't attracted to chaos. They're drawn to the man who has direction, who knows where he's going and refuses to be distracted by anything that doesn't align with his mission. That kind of energy doesn't need to chase. It pulls everything it needs toward it. Discipline is the quiet force that shapes you when no one's watching. It's not glamorous. And it's not easy. It's showing up when you don't feel like it, doing the work when there's no applause, and staying focused when temptation tries to derail you. A disciplined man doesn't depend on motivation, he depends on standards. That's why he becomes so rare, because in a world full of inconsistency, he's dependable. And dependability is deeply attractive. It's what makes people feel safe around you, what builds respect without words. Purpose gives that disciplined direction. When you have purpose, you stop moving randomly. You're not wasting energy chasing instant gratification or validation. Every action, every decision, every effort is tied to something bigger than yourself. That kind of focus separates you from men who drift through life waiting for opportunities instead of creating them. Purposeful men don't complain about what they lack. They build what they need. And that makes them powerful because it shows they're not victims of life. They're architects of it. Integrity ties it all together. It's easy to talk about values, but integrity is about living them. It's about doing the right thing when no one's watching, keeping promises, even when it's inconvenient, and choosing honesty over comfort. Integrity creates trust, and trust creates influence. When people know your word means something, when your actions match your principles, you naturally gain respect without asking for it. That's the kind of energy that can't be faked. And it's what women find deeply attractive, even if they can't explain why. When a man has discipline, purpose, and integrity, he becomes emotionally stable. He's not controlled by external circumstances. He doesn't lose himself in temporary emotions. He stays calm in chaos and steady under pressure. That calmness is what makes him stand out because it's the opposite of what most people are used to. It's not just about being strong physically. It's about being anchored mentally and emotionally. A man like that doesn't need to prove himself through dominance or ego. His presence alone commands respect. Women are drawn to that kind of man because he represents security, not financial, but emotional and psychological security. A man who leads himself can lead others. He's not seeking control, he's creating stability. And stability is irresistible in a world full of inconsistency and uncertainty. Most men waste years of their lives trying to be liked. They shape their personality to fit what others expect. They overextend themselves to gain approval and soften their edges to avoid judgment. But being liked is not the same as being respected. Being liked is temporary. It depends on how well you please others. Being respected is lasting. It depends on how well you lead yourself. The truth is, the more you chase being liked, the more you lose the strength that earns true admiration. Respect doesn't come from fitting in, it comes from standing firm. When you stop performing for approval, you start making choices based on alignment instead of acceptance. You stop asking, will they like me if I do this? And start asking, is this right for me? That shift is powerful because it moves you from a reactive mindset to a purposeful one. It's no longer about managing impressions, it's about living authentically. You stop diluting your truth to keep others comfortable. You stop shrinking your ambition to make others feel secure. And that authenticity, even if it challenges people, becomes your greatest source of influence. Because people might not always agree with you, but they'll always respect your conviction. Living to be respected means developing consistency between what you say and what you do. It's easy to talk about values, confidence, and strength, but the world watches your actions, not your words. Respect is earned when you keep promises, show up on time, follow through, and live with discipline even when no one is watching. It's built through small, repeated actions that reflect self-control and character. That's what makes someone trustworthy, and trust is far more attractive than charm. When a man focuses on being respected, he stops bending to every emotional impulse. He doesn't react to every opinion or get rattled by rejection. He's not trying to convince anyone that he's enough because he already knows he is. That inner certainty changes everything about how he moves. He walks differently, speaks differently, makes decisions differently. He becomes a man of presence, the kind of man who doesn't need to talk about his worth because it's evident in how he carries himself. And here's the irony. When you stop trying to be liked and focus on earning respect, you end up becoming more likable. Because people are drawn to authenticity. They crave realness in a world where everyone is performing. A man who lives in alignment with his truth, who has the courage to stand by his values, who's not afraid to lose approval for the sake of integrity. That man becomes magnetic. He doesn't need to chase validation because his life already reflects self-validation. The most attractive quality a person can have is self-respect expressed through action. When you start living that way, the right people naturally gravitate toward you. You stop needing to prove your worth because your consistency, confidence, and character already prove it for you. At the end of the day, becoming irresistible isn't about tricks, charm, or image. It's about transformation. It's about building yourself from the inside out with self-respect, grounded confidence, firm boundaries, purpose, driven action, and a life led by integrity. When you live by these principles, you stop trying to be chosen because you've already chosen yourself. You stop needing validation because your actions speak for you. And that's the shift that changes everything. You no longer chase energy. You attract it. You no longer seek approval. You inspire it. The men who understand this truth don't just win in relationships, they win in life. Because they've learned that real power, real attraction, and real peace all come from the same place, self-mastery. Thank you for listening, for showing up for yourself, and for having the courage to face the truth that most people avoid. Keep building yourself. Keep raising your standards. And remember, the moment you stop trying to be liked and start living with purpose, you become the kind of person who doesn't have to chase respect. It naturally follows you.